Hello, everyone, and welcome to Think Outside Yourself. I'm your host, Brendan Schlucci, and with me is my good friend, Reece Whitley.
Thanks for having me on, Brendan. Good to be here.
Well, a little behind the history of Reece. He is my swimming teammate from high school. He's a two-time national champion at Cal Berkeley, 2015 Sports Kid of the Year from Sports Illustrated, and I mean the records and accolades go on. But I know Reece is just an awesome guy, and I'm grateful to have you here. So, if you don't mind, I know this is usually how your interviews go, but take us back to when you first got into swimming. So, how did that come about, and when did you realize it was something that was going to take you places?
Yeah, no, great question. It actually started at, our alma mater. It started at Penn Charter. I was 7 years old, and I was in the summer camp at Penn Charter, just kind of as a kid. And, I wanted to take the deep water test as every young kid does. And unfortunately I failed those tests. I failed it 3 times, I think. I don't remember it personally anymore. A lot of history since then, but I did fail 3 times, and after that last time, I just asked my mom to get me the swim lessons, and the rest is kind of history, as they say. I broke my first what's called the national age group record when I was 12. We did it in a relay first, but then I got my own individual later that year. And that's when I thought that I could be good. I mean, age group swimming is, I think people beef it up a little bit more than what it really kind of is. I think it takes a different kind of athlete to be good in high school and in college and at the pro level. It's not all about age group swimming, but that definitely inspired me to be a little bit more focused on that sport. And by the time I was 14, I stopped baseball and basketball, and I began on this swim journey.
Yeah, it really is interesting to see like when parents or coaches or staff of like a certain sport will put so much emphasis on like the early years when everybody's growing at different rates. Everybody has their own like journey and stuff like that. Like I know for me, for baseball, like some kids won't become good till they're like 20, 21 years old when they're like fully grown and fully strong. And I feel like, yeah, so like putting so much emphasis on like a 12-year-old making a breaking a record is a little much.
Yeah,
But
absolutely.
and you brought up your mom, and I'm glad you did because it leads into my next question. So I've had the honor of meeting your parents a couple times, both fantastic people. How do your parents, or how did they play a role in not only motivating you, but like leading by example? Because I know they're both doctors, they're both very successful. Like, how did that help motivate you?
Yeah, so my father is an ear, nose, and throat surgeon, still practicing at Temple. And then my mom's a pediatric hematologist by training, but her most recent opportunities have been in biotech, actually. So she is
Wow.
not in the hospital as much. She's more on the business side of the world, which has been cool because she stepped over into a little bit of my space and what I studied in school. But my parents are everything. Anybody that knows me well enough knows that my parents are my rocks, both my mom and my dad. I think from an early age, being an only child, I just simply had just a great relationship with them out of the gate. Because I was spending so much time with them, whether it was them driving me to practice while they went to work, or picking me up from practice at the end of the day. The one thing that's been consistent with them is they've always instilled trust in me, which I think is so powerful. And I don't think a lot of kids that we grew up with necessarily might have had the same relationship with their parents. It's obviously a crazy world that we live in. I'm not so sure if I'll be
Yeah.
as trusting of my kids as my parents were of me, but that's besides the point. They let me do it what I just wanted to do, and obviously, I love to be athletic. I loved being in the classroom, being competitive, and both of those environments, which kept me pretty busy. So I didn't really have much time to get into trouble outside of that. So once that was
Yeah.
established, they just kind of let me roll.
It really is awesome when you get to see parents like trust in kids. Like I think one thing that I value the most from my mom especially was the fact that I felt like I could talk to her about anything. And I hope that when I have my kids, hopefully when you have your kids, like that it's the same way. It's a really special relationship when you're able to be vulnerable with your parents instead of feel like you have to hide things from them, you know?
Certainly, certainly, and there's a lot of pressure to just kind of live to expectations. Obviously, they've been successful in their respective fields as physicians, but at an early age, they kind of just their ability to let me do what I wanted to do. From an early age, it was clear that it was a little bit of a different path than they were on,
Yeah.
and so that just kind of just completely erased their expectations for me. Just as long as I was, one, having fun and putting my all into something while staying sharp in the classroom, they let me do my thing.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about the fact that you played baseball, that you played basketball. Being as tall as you are, and for those who don't know, Reece is 6'12". But I'm just kidding. He's 6'9". But so due to your height, did you have any people like at the early ages try to sway you? Be like, no, don't stick with swimming. Come play basketball, like stuff like that.
Yeah, I think tall kids kind of get recruited for every sport. People find a way to try to act. Oh, you're tall. I wasn't necessarily the most athletic kid. I was just kind of tall and lanky, and I could get up and down the floor relatively well, and they put me on the mound, and I would do relatively all right. And honestly, I think baseball was kind of like my first love in sport. Just kind of, I think being on the mound, you obviously have made a career out of it, but I think you can relate to like feeling like you're in control when you're on the mound. That's something that I loved, and in terms of the feeling. And so, swimming kind of popped off first, but I also found that you were kind of in control of your own destiny and in swimming too. And I, was lucky enough to have amazing coaches that I had amazing coaches that were right at my school that I didn't really have to move around to go find or anything. I didn't have to move from state like a lot of kids have to do. I was just blessed with having a really good foundation right in my backyard. And so, that in and of itself kind of kept me very interested and just very happy at the pool. A happy swimmer is a fast swimmer, so that kind of took over.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So when we first met, kind of, it was about a year into like us becoming friends and stuff. It was when you became the sports kid of the year. Yeah. Now, first of all, how much of an honor was that, and how much did it kind of take you by shock from having such a kind of prestigious award at such a young age?
Brendan, it's so. Yeah, I tend to forget about it sometimes, which is bad of me. But I was 15 at the time, so I was just very young, a baby, to be quite frank. But
yeah, for real.
That experience changed my life. There's no other way to put it. To give you a little bit of backstory, that was actually an award that I knew absolutely nothing about, and my coach Crystal actually, nominated me for the award about 3 days before the deadline.
Are you serious?
Yeah, like I was a super last minute entry into the conversation, and I actually didn't even know that she like nominated me for the award, what it was. I had absolutely no idea. And I didn't realize that she had even nominated me until I was announced as a finalist, like which was like top 5 kids out of hundreds of thousands of applicants. And so it was just like, wow, like this is, I have no idea what this is. It sounds amazing. It's an honor to be nominated, and let's see if we can, get together some votes, because the other kids are so impressive, and it's been fun to see their journeys kind of take off as well. But the year before, Monet Davis had won the award, and so Monet was thing in the country at the time. Literally, the biggest story in sports was Monet Davis, just the year before, and so I think her superstardom blew up the award the year after, and I was lucky enough to get the opportunity.
Yeah, you had all the attention.
I was just kind of like, I'm not nearly at the same level as she was competing at, but it was, they felt like I was right for the award, and it put me in some interesting spaces where I had to grow up really fast. Lots of media attention, lots of new expectations, lots of looks around school, both positive and negative, and so dealing with the throes that the many challenges that faced was an amazing process, and I'm so grateful that I was able to come out on the other side and do relatively well, because it really pushed me out of my comfort zone. I don't like a lot of attention, and that gave me a lot, and so it was just like, wow, okay, how are we going to navigate this? And it goes back to my parents. They helped me go through everything, like, the Good Morning America announcement, and talking to the New York Times, Washington Post, Inquirer, like every newspaper wanted to get a bit of just this 15-year-old that had a good story to tell and was relatively naive on the world. I think everybody kind of likes when there's a whole lot of potential and the kid has no idea what's going on, really. And so that's where I was, and I'm so thankful for it.
That's awesome, man. And it's really interesting seeing that how well you dealt with the press at such a young age. I remember like the first time I ever had like an interview at a tournament. I was like 16 maybe, and I was very, very nervous. And I think back to that, and I'm like, that was just like a normal interview. This man is going to Good Morning America, the New York Times. That I don't know if I could have dealt with that at 15. So kudos to you. But the one memory I have, which is just hysterical, is when we had the party for it, like at the Eagle Stadium, and Dylan Betances was there, and I walked in and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm the only person here that knows who that guy is. It was hysterical.
He was great. Dylan was there, and then I don't know if you remember, but Rodney McLeod was actually there too. He was injured at the time.
I didn't remember that.
Yeah, he was injured at the time, but they took us to the locker room. I forget who else was there, but a couple of eventual Super Bowl champions were in that locker room.
Yeah.
So it's cool to look back on that day and to have everybody there, all my high school and middle school teammates. It was so incredible, and I hope that nobody took offense that it was just for me. I always felt a little
I highly doubt that.
I seriously, I did. It's just like, why are all these people,
No, I know.
Probably don't want to go just for me, but it was experience nonetheless. It was fun.
No, Reece, you're as humble as they come, and it's a great quality to have. So let's talk a little bit about high school. So looking back on it, we had a lot of time together, a lot of experiences. What are some of your favorite times from your time at Penn Charter?
Oh, there's so many. I literally am a lifer. I was a lifer at Penn Charter, so I was 5 years old when I stepped foot on campus, which is pretty.
That is incredible to think about.
It's wild, My big 5-year-old self probably looked like a second grader, but in kindergarten. But there are so many memories. I think one that sticks out is just being a color day captain. I was on the blue team, so it's blue team forever. And I think by the time by the time middle school came around, I was swimming full time, and unfortunately that event isn't in color day, or sorry, not color day, PCGA day. But I did just have so much fun watching my peers going out and compete in, a very highly tenuous rivalry with Germantown Academy, watching my football guys go out there and do their thing every year. Those are my kind of first experiences, or very early experiences, with just adrenaline and having passion in seeing and wanting to be a part of something and wanting to see other people do well in that process. So I have incredible memories from Penn Charter that are have been foundational in just what I seek in life and types of situations that I want to put myself in. So.
For sure. I mean, yeah, there's like you said, man, there's countless memories from Penn Charter. I was only there for 5 years, but like at the same point, you look back on it and you're just grateful for your time there. So, but due to that, I mean, we're all going through our adolescence at Penn Charter. There's always things going on in people's lives. And the thing I really like to hone in on, especially with athletes that are looked at kind of on a pedestal a little bit, is that you never know what they're going through.
Yeah.
Apologies. You never know what's going on in their lives. So if you wouldn't mind touching on it, I would really appreciate, during the time where you're the sports kid of the year, you're absolutely demolishing everyone in the pool because there's no one in our area that's coming close to you. Was there anything going through high school that you dealt with that maybe people didn't see or people didn't think was going on because of the fact that you were kind of on that pedestal due to swimming?
Yeah. There's a lot, and you're close with me, so there are probably that question we could go hours talking about that.
Yeah, for sure.
But I think one of the things that I think is a bit unfair about that time period and just being a high school athlete with a bit of success is that I think people think that you ask for everything first and foremost, and then people think that everything is given, which is another just something that I had a problem with at a very early age. The swimming world kind of accepted me and put me out there when I was probably 12 or 13. So it started a little bit before the sports kid stuff. But, I had a lot of negative attention in addition to everything that on the surface, might have been positive. But it definitely didn't feel like that all the time. Like every middle school and high school kid, they go through challenges with relationships for the first time, friend relationships. And, I had to learn very quickly who was real and who wasn't. And what kinds of people I wanted in my corner, for better, for worse, right? And living with what that came with. And so I think people at Penn Charter in particular probably thought that, oh, here's this guy, doesn't seem like he messes up that often. He's got cameras following him around, and, he's cocky and arrogant because of it. And, I felt like maybe not administration or teachers, but I felt like a lot of my peers just kind of saw me as, not really one of them, which sucked. And I think that over time, athletes don't necessarily get credit for going to school too. A lot of people probably took me for someone that wasn't, I guess, academically inclined. And so, not that deterred me from excelling, or at least not even excelling, but just trying on a daily basis. In fact, I think it motivated me in a lot of ways, and those motivations are still kind of burning inside. I think that's why I've been able to get to where I am relative to my peers, is because at an early age, not everything was peachy. And so I had to, again, kind of grow up a little fast, and understand some things that I think people don't really understand until maybe college or until they're grown. And, for better or for worse, that got me through the ups and downs, of just like me having, positive things and great times and fast swims and everything. But at the same time, feeling quite a bit of self-inflicted pressure, just to not really mess up. And, I think that's something that, not a lot of people probably assumed. But, it was the reality, and you can't really fault people, for having passed certain judgments about me. I mean, we're crying out loud, like we're 16, 17 years old. So
Yeah.
it's like, who really knows any better? But, at the same time, it's like I was kind of the butt end of a lot of these things. And so I was the one that had to deal with them. And over time, even though Penn Charter is a small school, there were other athletes that were doing so well too. So it just brought me closer to them. And I think from an early age, I had just a greater appreciation for what was going on, in school. People in my grade in particular, and like, half of you guys were in the league.
Yeah.
Be like, we won in baseball, and so I got close with those folks and have tried to just follow their careers, like people like G. DeMarco, Lindsay Reyna, obviously Siani has done incredibly well. Lexi Joseph played at Duke. So there are a bunch of people who have, I feel like I got close with throughout high school, just because I knew what it was like, to kind of be a high functioning athlete, with aspirations beyond high school. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like how you said, how you need to grow up fast, because there is a point in every athlete's career, especially one that's going to be like have the success that you have, where you need to really figure out who's real or not, because there's going to be a lot of people in this world that are going to want to take advantage of you. And it's like every athlete's going to figure that out at some point. It's just a matter when are you going to figure it out. And you had to figure that out at a really a really young age.
Yeah.
So it really is interesting, and it transitions really well into my next question, because we were surrounded, like I said before, we were surrounded by a lot of people that couldn't really compete with you. And that's just how it was. There weren't a whole bunch of swimmers in our area that could give you a run for your money. So you were essentially on a different mission than the rest of us. We would all come to swim practice and like get our work in and stuff like that. Me, I was just getting in shape for baseball season. But you're surrounding yourself with people that like can't really give you a run for your money. So what was it that like kept you motivated? Because they always say you want to surround yourself with people that are better than you, so it pushes you to do more. What kept pushing you through a time where it was harder to surround yourself with those types of people?
No, that's an amazing question. I am a big believer in surrounding yourself with people that are better than you. That's why I came to Cal. But at the time, I always knew that there was something out there beyond high school swimming. I through my experience on the junior national team and just kind of, again, growing up fast in the sport, it's kind of presumed that you're going to roll with it at the NCAA level. And, I always had that insight, that vision insight. And, my coach, Crystal, was amazing in getting me through that process and kind of keeping me determined, just to push on a daily basis. I loved seeing self-improvement as well. I fell in love with the grind. I fell in love with, being at school to lift at 6 a.m. and not leaving, in the fall. We would practice after water polo, so we wouldn't leave the pool until 8:15. So those were my, early, 10 plus hour days, at school, working on, my body, working in the pool, and then working academically as well. I fell in love with that grind. I really did. And, college swimming is that on steroids.
I bet.
It didn't really go away. But it's a good thing that I fell in love with it at the time. And so that's what kind of kept me motivated to just, quite simply keep my head down. I mean, you know how it was for me. Like I didn't really do much else, besides just kind of grind at that age. And so that's what I fell in love with. Again, not too many people, my peers were obviously grinding in their respective ways, which I will always appreciate, but it might not necessarily been as crazy as it was for some others. And so just kind of understanding that and understanding that there was more out there, that I still needed to prove myself. Not only did I need to be a good high school swimmer, but I needed to be able to deliver for whatever was next and whatever school that I decided to swim for next, and potentially beyond on the international stage. I needed to be able to at least hold my own. And so that kept me pretty driven, because that was these ideas and these, potential channels for the future were thrust on me at a very early age. And so getting comfortable being uncomfortable was something that I just kind of had to learn to do, and learn to practice, and that's what kept me going.
Yeah, no, that's awesome, man. It's always, I always love hearing about people's stories of finding a love for that grind and becoming like a tad obsessed with it. It's always fun to hear about that. So you talked about it just a little bit there, but would you mind taking me through your recruiting process? I mean, I know I was there were coaches that would come to our practices sometimes, but each sport kind of has a different recruiting process. Like guys that were close with that played lacrosse, like they're committed their freshman year.
Yeah.
So it's really different. So would you mind touching on that a bit?
Yeah, of course. I guess the first introduction to recruiting for me was like seeing Mike commit like his freshman year, to UVA at the time. And, like you said, all the baseball guys and Blacks guys go pretty early, but mine didn't start a little bit later. At the time, it's since changed, but we were able to be contacted September of my junior year. That was the first time that we were allowed to get contacted by coaches. And fortunately enough for me, by my junior year, I was, quote unquote up there. There are obviously amazing recruits that come out of high school, but I was definitely among the, top 3, top 2 that were kind of out there in terms of, who was on these coaches' radars. So it happened pretty fast. September 1st, my email, I had a lot of emails.
Yeah, I bet.
But none from where I actually wanted to go, the one program that I actually wanted to go. So I kept my head down for a little bit. I talked to Stanford a lot, really early. Florida as well, NC State, spoke with them. But honestly, I had to practice saying no for the first time in a respectful fashion. So that, I narrowed down my list very fast to about, those 4 schools that I mentioned. And I was actually really close. I think people know this. But I was actually really close to committing to Stanford. I actually got an early admit. Some of their recruits do get early admission if their grades do stand
Wow.
up. And so, yeah, I got early admission, and it kind of made sense for me to be like, hey, look, it's December, January right now. Pretty much everybody else has reached out, besides one, and if they don't want to reach out at this point, then okay, then I'm kind of ready to go. But funny enough, I want to say I was in like an English class, and I got a text from this like 415 number, which was or maybe 925. But both area codes that were foreign to me back then, which I
Yeah.
become familiar with now. There's a long text, and at the bottom it just says, signed Dave Durden, and I was on the floor. I was.
No, I you know what the funniest thing is that I'm thinking about back at Penn Charter when they got the phone rules. So you got to look at it and like
Yeah,
out of your pocket, just like,
I was like,
oh my
oh,
gosh, oh my god! But you can't say anything because we're not allowed to have our phones.
I know. Well, I snuck mine out. And thinking it was a text from my mom or my dad, and it's
Yeah,
really this coach who has coached so many guys who I've looked up to in our sport, and who have just done so well, and not only inside out of the pool, but I looked up to these guys for the way they carried themselves outside of the pool. I think that's another thing that probably not a lot of people realize as well. Like I don't think this is necessarily a good thing, but I didn't have that many role models in the sport. I looked up to guys, obviously, that swam at the Olympics or whatever, but a lot of the guys that I kind of fell in love with in this sport and fell in love with following and trying to emulate, were guys that I saw through this recruiting process. And at Cal, I mean, you got guys like Nathan Adrian, Tom Shields, Ryan Murphy, the list goes on, Andrew Seliskar. And, now I've had the opportunity to be, exposed to guys from the class of 2018 all the way to, I'm a fifth year now, and I got guys that are graduating 2026, 2025, I don't even know. I've been
it's
exposed
interesting, and
so many guys that are just incredible, and so it made it so easy for me to commit to Cal and get the ball rolling.
it's interesting too because like from a perspective of someone who grew up like liking swimming, not loving it, but I don't hear too much about like the outside life of swimmers. I see them at the Olympics, I see them at the big races, but then like I don't know what Michael Phelps is doing. I don't know what his hobbies are, but and I think that's interesting too because coming up in swimming, like you said, it's kind of hard to have role models because you don't really know how their character is, like how these people are. You only see them at like the really big races.
Yeah, no, there are so many different types of characters that are in our sport. Unfortunately, I've been able to experience, world traveling. So I know swimmers and high level athletes from all over the world now. And there are so many amazing personalities in our sport. But that said, the group of guys that I felt most comfortable around, I felt most like myself, were the Cal Bears, and that exists to this day. I think a lot of who I am is because of this program, and I realize how lucky I am. It's so much bigger than I could have ever imagined in middle school or high school. You really are set up for life. If you take advantage of the right things, you really are set up to do quite well if you take advantage of certain opportunities and just continue to work hard and stay diligent and keep a level head on your shoulders. The world can really be your oyster if you go to Cal and get to participate on the men's swim team. And I think, like you said, it was a little bit lonely for me at Penn Charter, and I stepped on to a squad with Olympic champions, world record holders, world champions, you name it. Literally every accomplishment in the sport of swimming has been achieved at Cal, so there's not you're not really impressing anybody, by being good in high school. And so that I was knocked down to the bottom of the rung, and I loved that. I wouldn't have had it any other way. That's why I chose Cal. That's why I chose Berkeley as an environment, because nobody knew who I was and nobody cared who I was. And so it was so easy to just fall in line and operate, and just work on a craft and work on becoming a full human being. And I've been able to do that at Cal, and I'm so grateful for my time here.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. It's nobody wants to be like the one really good guy on a bad team, Like I mean, if you are, I mean, good for you, but that doesn't sound too fun to me. I think that was one of my favorite things about. I mean, you remember you were junior, our senior year, we were just stacked with baseball. We were stacked, and like I was the third best player on that team, like I in my opinion, but at the time, and we had Lancelotti going to North Carolina throwing 96. We had Ciani hitting nukes going to UVA. Like I would get him on the bump. We would have it. It was crazy, but I'm sure that's how you felt. Yeah, absolutely, and I'm sure that's how you felt going into like an environment where it's like, now you got to beat us. You got like I love the saying, "Be uncommon amongst the uncommon." It's not good enough just being good. It's like, okay, now you're put in a pool of everybody's good. Are you going to beat them now? Like, what are you going to do now? So that's awesome to hear. And also, I want to know about the culture change. Like, what was it like going from Philly, rough city, to Berkeley, California, which sounds like paradise right now?
I know, it was a beautiful afternoon today. So amazing, the weather. Pretty much all the time. People do take for granted how cold it actually can get up here because everything's outside.
Really?
And, 6 a.m. practice can be, low 40s, high 30s sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't sound fun.
It's not good. It's not good for outdoor practice, but oh man, I mean, Berkeley is everything that I wanted it to be and more. It actually reminds me of Philly in a lot of ways. I think the greatest similarity is that everybody's hustling. Everybody's grinding. I think people do it in a different way out here. So at first I had to slow down a little bit, not walk as fast. Berkeley classes actually start 10 minutes past the hour. It's called Berkeley time.
Really?
Yes. So
everybody's just casual.
Yes, so casual. I showed up to my first class. I'll never forget it. It was a philosophy class. I thought I would be a good student, a first day of college, and show up. I showed up 15 minutes early to my 9 a.m. class.
Oh, you were just sitting there, weren't you?
By myself for so long. I was literally sitting there. I was like, am I even in the right place? What's going on? And
you're panicking. You're like checking your schedule. Like, okay, it's the right class. It's the right class.
I'm freaking out. It's my first day of college, and I'm at this crazy institution, so competitive. Among the highest in the world, and here I am, like getting the classrooms wrong on the first day. Like I'm gonna have a long 4 years here. And the professor literally walks in at 9:09 and is like, "All right, let's go. 9:10, ready to go."
That's great.
Yeah, little stuff like that was definitely interesting to get used to. But I think another similarity is, and I mentioned this a little bit before, is that everybody is so good at something. Like everybody's better than you at something, not only in the pool but outside of the pool as well. And so I definitely don't get afraid by that. I think it does scare a lot of people. Like, so when, I come home and people tell me like, oh, how crazy is Berkeley on the inside? And it's like, yeah, like it is pretty crazy, but I think it just presents an unparalleled opportunity to learn from literally every person that you speak to on a daily basis, whether it's the
That's
professor
awesome.
or your peers in class, people that, appear like they're super laid back California kids who, just do nothing all day are usually the brightest kids in the room, which I've come to learn. Which is incredible, and something that I wish more people on the East Coast could kind of be exposed to and appreciate a little bit. But at the same time, I have kept my Philly roots strong. I think people think a lot of people think I'm mean still, but I tell you, it's like I go back home and I'm told that I'm soft. So I feel like I've found this like happy medium of East Coast and West Coast vibes now. So.
That's great. That's a really great thing you said about finding an opportunity in everybody you meet. I like that a lot, and that was awesome. So I want to dive a little bit into the mental game and your routines when it comes to swimming.
Yeah.
Do you have any routines? Did you have any in high school or in college, and how did they change going about your career?
Absolutely. That's an amazing question. To be honest, I was like a lot of kids in high school that I just kind of did what ever was in front of me. You know what I mean? I did, I had tasks. I saw them. I did them without, kind of mindlessly. And fortunately did relatively well. The only routine in my day was, actually going to practice, actually going to school, actually going to a second practice and just kind of being done for the day and doing homework. But in school, I don't think routine hit me until, quite frankly, COVID happened.
Okay.
Again, like freshman year in school, you don't really have any clue what's going on. I was, fortunate enough to walk on to a very amazing team that, quite frankly, didn't really need me anyway. I definitely, I scored in my A finals and, got on a couple relays as well as a freshman, but the team didn't really need me. So we won freshman year with me kind of getting a free ride, not really having to worry about much else other than, myself and simply like high school just being where I needed to be. But once
Okay.
COVID happened, there were just like, obviously the world was turned upside down and we really had to find out who we were on the inside. And I think what spurred my general routine was mindfulness and meditation. And so once I learned how to incorporate that in my day to day, obviously my schedule is pretty rigid on a daily basis, but incorporating that, allowed me to make time to stretch, take care of my body, cook, get the right supplements in my body at certain times, do things that were getting me ready for the next day in the best way possible. And so I've definitely developed quite a routine now that, I've done fine with. I try new things all the time, but definitely, I definitely have a routine now. Maybe not before, though, not really before COVID.
Do you do any? Coming from a pitcher, I do a lot of visualization because we can only have so many reps like throwing in a day. Like,
Yeah.
so mental reps are so important too. Do you guys as swimmers do any type of visualization?
Visualization is massive in our sport. It's absolutely huge. No swimmer at the highest level, they're lying if they told you they've never visualized. Some people can be really good at it. Phelps is known for having amazing skills with visualization. Everything from his goggles falling off to the starter telling you to, step down from the blocks after you get on, stuff like that. Little things that can really shake up a situation. Say they're delayed 5 minutes on a schedule. What are you going to do in that situation? Visualizing everything that can possibly happen. It's a great task to have. There are guys on our team. I've gotten pretty solid at it. We only usually started around the postseason, when things are kind of in line and in clear sight. But guys can close their eyes and take you through their goal swim to the second. It's incredible. And in a sport,
That's wild.
yeah, it's crazy. They close their eyes for exactly 50 seconds, and they know where they are, and they they tell us to visualize everything from your celebration to walking back, and people on the pool deck and getting in for warm down. I mean, it's that deep in our sport, so we definitely practiced it constantly.
That's awesome. Now, I want to also talk about how important it is to be mentally strong when things don't always go your way. Do you have any advice for not only younger swimmers out there, but younger people or athletes on how to really bounce back or how to overcome any adversity that comes into your life or comes into your swimming day-to-day life?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. I've certainly had my challenges in this sport. I've seen people go through incredible things, both amazing, both great things and things that I wish I didn't have to go through, and have been by their side in that process, or have tried to be just by their side and contribute how I can as a friend in those situations.
Yeah.
But personally, I would advise just understanding that things are going to be okay. It's a big ask, because the world can feel really heavy sometimes, and for everyone. And this is something that I've learned is that every single person is going through this in some way, shape, or form, no matter what they look like on the surface. I think that's how our generation has just kind of been brought up in the age of social media, and other people's expectations are just so readily available to us now, especially as success increases. I think understanding that you can trust yourself. You have to just look around and be grateful for where you are, understand what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve, and most often than not, those goals are goals that your peers aren't going to have, or they're not going to see eye to eye on, and so you can't get caught up in comparison, in trying to be like somebody else. I mean, this is something that I've come to appreciate over time, but you are in your own you're in your own life, and this is more advice for my peers and people who are in their early 20s, is that you really are in control of your future at this point. Your parents aren't there every day. You might even live by yourself. Your friends have different things going on in their lives, and so it's not everything's going to feel great. But I think if you can take measured risk and push yourself and allow yourself to be uncomfortable and operate in a certain frame of mind, and if you repeatedly show yourself that you're okay on the other side of this, of whatever challenge you may face, I think that's the perfect way to operate through life, and be able to reward yourself, be able to take a break and reflect on what you've gone through as well. Because if you're in a constant state of just grind, and you never look around to see how much improvement you've made, or you see somebody else that you love doing well too, or you miss so many things if you get too caught up in yourself. So that's something that I had to learn pretty much out of the gate when I got to Cal too, because it's pretty easy to just like hone in and dial in on what you're doing in high school. Because like your friends are going to be there or whatever. Like you go home to your parents every day, but that's obviously not the case once you step foot on campus. So you really have to learn how to take care of yourself and take care of your tribe, regardless of the situation. But you can also rely on people around you if you have access to good people around you. And so, I would be remiss if I didn't say that, I wouldn't have been able to get where I am without the people around me. Regardless of what people say to me, people say about me, people assume about my career, where I'm going. I am a true believer in being a product of your environment, and it just so happens that at an early age, I earned an opportunity to be in one of the most highly functioning organizations in all of world sports. And so it's just something that, for better or for worse, I kind of fell into. And I've just on a daily basis tried to work hard, just like I did when I was, failing that deep water test when I was 7, right? Just trying to work hard. And a lot
for sure, man.
And a lot of this path has felt like a failure. This sport is grueling. You know that. Like it's
absolutely, man.
So I just try.
It's essentially like you're not only are you competing against others, but you're competing against yourself too.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love that idea as well of competing against yourself. I think that's a beauty in certain sports that it goes sometimes a little bit untapped, because like when you're competing with yourself, like whether it comes to anything, weightlifting and stuff like that, that's in your control. Like I think ownership is so important when it comes to sports, because not only are you owning the failures that you've gone through, but it's important to own the successes too. It's important to say, when you wake up in the morning and you look in the mirror, you're like, I'm Reece Whitley. I'm a 2-time national champion. We did that. I did that. But yeah, when it comes down to sports and when you're competing with yourself, when you're competing against others, it's always so important just to have that ownership, that understanding that failure and successes will both come, but be proud of your successes and embrace the failures,
Certainly.
So just a couple more questions before you head out, and I wanted to dive a little deep with this one. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like being a black male in a predominantly white sport, and not only just a black male, also a 6'9" black male? So it's not like you're flying under the radar or anything like that. Like, eyes are on you as soon as you walk in there. So would you mind talking to me about that?
Yeah. It's something that obviously I've been asked about a lot at this point. And I think, from an early age, regardless of my skin tone, I was very, very comfortable in my own skin. I think that's something that kind of allowed me to be here in this sport. I think a lot of other people who, as we're out there basically more, almost naked up there on the blocks.
Just about.
Yeah. Like you're letting everything out there, and it's like, oh man, like I'm trying to make it through this pool and not die at the end of a race in front of all these people. At a very early age, I just kind of had to be like, hey, look, man, you gotta be able to get down with this. And swimming is not exactly the most diverse sport, and we're working, we're advocating and pushing for ways to make the sport more accessible for everyone. But I really tend not to dwell on it too much. I think I definitely take time to understand, like, hey, look, a lot of the things that you're doing right now haven't necessarily been attempted by people that look like you and can understand Black culture in the way that you do, and so I I wear a little bit of that swag on me when I'm out there competing. That's
Yeah.
for sure. I wear that
As you should, bro.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a part of who I am. I feel like any room that I've been able to speak in the swimming space, and fortunately, it's taken me across the world. So, people across the world know that 6'10" black guys can also swim relatively fast. Um, and I take pride in that. It's something that has developed into one of the very many chips on my shoulder, and I just love that about what I get to do. I've fallen in love with that, and so I don't necessarily think of it as a burden. I think of it as something that just makes me who I am.
No, and it absolutely shouldn't be. I last week I actually had on Bianca Smith, who was one of the Red Sox coaches, and she was the first ever African American female professional coach. And it's I think it when I ask like certain questions that pertain to that, I think it's like the one thing that's very common is that it should be worn on your sleeve. It should be like one of those things that you own. Like it's like, have that swagger. Know that there's not a lot of guys that look like me that have done this, but I am. Like that's what's important. I'm doing this. So I applaud you, man. I applaud you, and I'm so grateful for. I'm so grateful for the time that we've spent together over the years, and more than anything, I'm grateful that you came on this show. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to all that listened. And Reece, if you wouldn't mind, I would love to hear some sort of quote or mantra that you live by before we sign off.
Oh man, the best question for last, Brendan. Before I say anything, dude, I just want to say thank you for your positivity and your presence in my life. A lot of the risks that I've taken in terms of me just being an advocate for myself and for my people. I've taken a lot from you. I would be remiss if I didn't say that. You lead by example, and it's been amazing to watch you too. I've taken a lot of inspiration from it, so I encourage you to keep expanding this platform and taking this to wherever it goes.
Thank you.
But my piece of advice, or my mantra, lean into pain. Lean into pain. A lot of swimming is focused on pain tolerance. And that's when you feel that threshold. That's not the time to run away from it. That's the time to lean into it and dig. Again, it's trusting that you're going to be okay on the other side, and even if you get hurt or something happens or you hear a time that you're not happy with, whatever context that may apply to your life or somebody else's life, I would suggest leaning into that discomfort. Because that's the only way you're gonna know if you can get it or not, is by leaning into that. So
Absolutely, it's like it's the pain of the grind or the pain of regret.
Yeah,
which one do you want to choose?
Absolutely.
Well, like I said, man, thank you again, and thank you all for listening. Have a good one.